A Time of Change by Mary Marciel, voiced by Brian Marciel, a great nephew. Chapter 1. Exhaustion sets in as the lone Confederate soldier relaxes his long, lanky frame in his saddle. His hand swipes an unruly lock of yellow hair from his eyes as he replaces the cavalry hat. His wary bay horse needs to rest, so he dismounts and pulls the saddle off to take a brush to the horse's tired back. He has been riding non-stop since his unit was released from duty. He looks about him, taking in some scene of utter destruction brought about by years of war, and wonders how the countryside would ever heal itself. He stubbornly clings to his southern roots, not willing to accept the Emancipation Proclamation or any of the Yankees' demands. He was willing to die for the cause, but apparently Lee wasn't, as he had surrendered the troops. The whinny of a horse jolts Jackson from his musing, a state which can get him killed. "Identify yourself, sir, or take a bullet," he shouts. Out of the trees, lining the remains of a tobacco field, rides a gray-clad soldier. As the figure rides closer, Jackson recognizes his old friend, Tom Silas. "Well, hi, friend. What are you doing here? I had heard you were at the High Bridge. I suppose you heard Lee surrender to Grant? I never thought I'd live to see the Yankees defeat our troops. But I guess Lee didn't feel that way." "Hi. Oh, I was at High Bridge all right. But that was a lost cause. I was lucky to get out there alive. My sergeant dismissed our unit and sent us home. He told us General Lee had surrendered. A sad time for us all." "I don't know about you, but I, for one, am not willing to just accept the end of slavery and the demise of the grand old South without a fight." The two old friends picked a sheltered spot and built a fire. It's time to rest and have some of their meager rations. The horses are hobbled and turned out to graze, something they haven't been able to do for some time. The pressures of war left little time to relax. The rest of the day passes without incident, leaving the two men time to rest and reflect. Tom stretches his large, massive body across his makeshift bed of branches and one thin blanket. Greg watches and thinks he would be a hard man to beat in a fight, and he is as strong as he is mean. They plan an early start, so they retire for the night. The next day, after many hours in the saddle, the weary travelers started thinking of stopping for the night. At last a likely-looking shack appears in the distance, giving them hope for a night out of the cold weather. Time to make a camp for the night. My horse is about played out, and my backside is getting sore. As they grow near, it is evident that no one has lived here for some time. It is partially burned out, but enough of it still stands to provide them shelter. An old shell of a barn is nearby, rather remarkably still standing, although leaning precariously to one side. "What do you think, Greg? It looks like it'll be safe for the horses, and they sure need a shelter for the night. The skies are turning black, and we may need to be in for a storm." "Looks safe enough. You go ahead, and I'll follow you inside." Having stabled the horses, they head for the shack. The front door is hanging by one hinge, but at least it has a roof. They prepare to eat a quick meal and then get comfortable for the night. Both were exhausted from the long ride and quickly fall asleep. Sometime during the night, the sounds of someone moving about into an adjacent room wakes Greg. He nudges Tom, who comes out of a deep sleep, confused as to what is going on. Greg nods towards the door and signals he will jerk open the door, and Tom stands ready to subdue the intruder. In a flash, the door is open and he grabs the stranger with his powerful arms. The struggle doesn't last long, as the stranger is only a young boy, who is more than scared than menacing. The boy wrestles free, backing into the corner away from the men. He can't be anyone more than 12 years old, Tom thinks. What are you doing out here alone, boy? This is my home. The Yankees came through here, burning and stealing, and my folks resisted. They didn't last long, though, as there were too many of them, he says with tears filling in his eyes. How come you weren't killed, then? I was out on the back 40 fishing in our pond. They never saw me. I wish they had killed me, though. I can understand that, boy, but you survived for a reason. You can't stay here alone, so in the morning we'll escort you to the nearest town. By the way, what's your name? We just can't keep calling you boy. This here is Tom Silas, and I'm Greg Jackson. John Wilcox, named after my father. He was an honorable man, and I carry his name with pride. A sob catches his throat. Morning broke with a layer of mist covering the fields. Now that they look around, they can see this indeed was a farm well taken care of until the Yankees moved away. The boy had buried his family in a little clearing nearby and marked the graves with little crosses made of sticks. Just another reason to hold on to their hatred of the Yankees. The trio ride in silence, lost in their own thoughts of family. Greg is thinking back on his youth, remembering the lost among 12 siblings and never gaining a relationship with his dad. His mother tried but was overworked and neglected, so she only provided the physical needs of her family. His only defense was to become stubborn and belligerent, something he has hung on to even now. Tom has memories of a drunken alcoholic father who beat the confidence out of his son, leaving him weak and dependent. His mother was afraid of him as Tom was, so she stayed out of the way. As Tom grew older and larger, his dad retreated into the bottle. His friend Greg became his idol and someone he admired and copied to compensate for his own insecurities. The riders make their way to the next little town. Two of them still wear the gray Confederate uniform, so as they approach the outskirts, the town folk spot him and walk out to greet him. As was the custom, the black folk hung back, aware of the place in society, yet trying to overhear the latest news. Good day, gentlemen. What brings you to our little town? The apparent spokesman said. Good day. We're on our way home, since Lee surrendered to the Yankee dogs. The war is over. Greg answered with anger in his voice. We ran across this boy, John Wilcox, left alone on his family's farm. His folks were murdered by the Yankees, but they didn't get him. He needs somebody to take him in. He is certainly welcome to stay here. We take care of our own. The townspeople all agreed in unison. John, looking apprehensive, looks up in place. If these guys will let me tag along, I would like to go with them. I had never been out of this valley, and I would like to see a little more of the world. So yourself, John. We would be honored to have you join us. We live over in the next state, so it will take us another week to get home. With the matter settled, they continued their journey. The day is still young, and they want to make it to the next settlement if possible. The miles passed slowly for the travelers, as they were getting anxious to see their families and friends. 2 years of war has left them with a hollow feeling like nothing in their part of the world will ever matter again. Just imagine having our field workers thinking they are equal with the landowners. I'll bet even the housekeepers and cooks think that they are as good as we are. I can't imagine what Lincoln was thinking when he declared them free men. One thing for sure, I will never accept the black men as being equal, or even a part of the human race. They are slaves, and always will be in my mind, Tom answers. Another hard day of riding brings them to the outskirts of a town Greg knows well. His sister had married a fellow who has a farm nearby, and he had visited her several times. Josie lives just over that ridge. Let's see if we can lay over a couple days so we can catch up on the news and the rest of the horses. Sounds like a plan. I always thought a lot of her, and I'd like to see how she's doing. John hangs back, unsure if he is included in their plans. Come on, John, my sister will welcome you. She's a really sweet girl, and her husband is a good fellow. Maybe we can help. with the work for a couple of days, earn our keep. At last the homestead is in view, and they are relieved to see the Yankees had not been through this area. It is a handsome little farm with the fields planted with care and the animals well tended. The main house is made of hand-hewn logs, crafted by a talented man who loves his work. Several outbuildings stand nearby to serve the needs of the family's livestock. A large silo is ready to receive the corn crop planted nearby, and a handy set of corrals completed the scene. Greg spots his sister bent over picking produce from her garden. Her golden hair, glistening in the sunlight, falls around her sun-tanned cheeks. "Hey, sis, we come to see you. How are you?" "Oh, hi. I didn't realize it was you." She sets down her basket loaded with vegetables and wipes her hands on her apron as she makes her way out of the garden. "Where are you headed? I heard we had lost the war, but I didn't know where you were. Are you going home?" "Yeah, we lost the war. Can't figure out why Lee gave up, but that wasn't my decision to make. You remember Tom, don't you? I ran across him on the trail, and this young fellow here is John Wilcox. We found him living alone on his folks' homestead. His folks were killed by the Yankees, but they missed seeing him, so he escaped unharmed. We brought him with us, such as of anybody else." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, but you have found a good friend in Greg." "And yes, of course, I remember Tom. We were neighbors for a long time. Now you guys tend to your horses and come in for supper. I was just getting some vegetables out of my garden to fix for tonight. And I'll warm up a ham we have in the smokehouse. Dave will be in here shortly. He'll be glad to see you." The night spreads its blankets over the homestead, and the ground settles down for a catch-up session. I really don't want to hear about the war, but I do wonder what your plans are when you get home. So far, I haven't thought about what is next. I don't have plans for my new friend John, but we can work out something for sure. John, bowing his head, runs his fingers through his red curly hair and says, "I hope you aren't sorry you brought me with you. We would never have left you out there alone, and I'm sure we will get along fine. There are many farmers that have lost their slaves and will be desperate for field workers. You know how to do that? So getting a job for you shouldn't be too hard. You could stay with me until you're ready to go on your own." "You say your folks were murdered by the Yankees?" asked Josie. "I can only guess, but they did leave signs of the Yankee cavalry. A saber with Yankee markings was one thing they dropped. I know a Confederate wouldn't have done that what they did. You know, I have heard of a marauding band of renegade soldiers who are terrorizing the countryside. They struck just north of here, and the sheriff has been tracking them. Seems they're hitting everyone, northern and southerners. It may just be them who raided your farm. I hate to think the Yankees are at fault for hurting your family." "Sounds like you're making excuses for them, Josie. How do you ever go back to being a Yankee lover?" "Oh, come on, the war is over, and we have to learn to live with it. You're still the most stubborn man I ever known. You'll never be at peace with yourself if you don't let go of your prejudices." With that, the evening comes to an abrupt halt, and everyone excuses themselves to retire for the night. The next day, a tense mood turns a happy reunion to an uncomfortable standoff. "What can we do to help out around here, sis? We want to earn our supper." "You can help David with the kevil, if you have the time. He needs to get the calves branded, and it's a real chore just with the two of us." "You got it, sis. We'll get it done today, and have it in the morning. It's time for us to move on." Early sunrise finds the travelers mounted and ready to ride out. Josie wanders out onto the front porch and calls out, "I have some food and extra clothes for you. You need to get out of those uniforms now that the war is over. Have a good trip and come back soon. We'll learn to live in our new South, brother." With the tip of his hat to his sister, he collects the offering and the trio moves out.